This is August the 4th, 2005, and we're in Halltown, Missouri, and Jerry Benner is here doing taking care of the technical aspect of this, and today we're going to be interviewing Thelma White. And
Today is
August the 4th, 2005, and Thelma, would you like to tell us where you were born and when, and how long you've lived in this area?
I'm a transplanted Hoosier. That's what I always tell people. I was born in Rush County, Indiana, and I came out here in the early 50s, I believe it was, to go to Ozark Bible College at Joplin, Missouri. And I met Jerry, so I stayed. And we have we were school teachers for 24 years. Each of us taught that long. And so we were various places in the state of Missouri. Well, Jerry was involved in an accident and wasn't going to be able to work, so we moved back to the farm and did what we could to renovate the house, and had to do it in pieces because we would just do what we could afford at that time. And we have one daughter, and she enjoyed the farm because she'd never been on one. But she was already in college, so she didn't really bond in here. And she met a young man from Indiana, and she lives in Indiana now. So we kind of traveled back and forth here. I was 79 years old on the 7th of July this year. So that makes it 26 when I was born. I sometimes have to come around things and get to it because I've had a stroke. And I don't zero in on stuff like I would like to. But I'll do the best I can. Well, I got interested in, I'd been to Indiana. Somebody was ill, and I went up there and helped take care of him. I don't remember who it was. I guess it's because everything was shoved out of my mind when I got back here. Jerry said, well, let's take a drive. I said, I have driven over 600 miles today. I don't want to drive anymore. He said, well, I'll drive, you just ride. So we came down here, and he opened it up, and I said, what are we doing here? He said, well, you're going to open a store in June. This was the latter part of May. And I said, well, the place looks cleaner than I thought. And he said, well, Stanley, that's his brother. And I think it was John that was the nephew that helped. And they'd cleaned all this. He said, all you have to do is price the stuff and we'll help you put it on the shelves. I thought, price all of this? Because I had been gathering things because I wanted to open an antique shop when I retired from teaching. So I started in, and I went for, I believe it was 3 years, just still teaching and doing this weekends and in the summer. And after I retired from teaching, I had more time down here, and I met more interesting people, and I realized there was a lot of interest in 66. And I also knew that we were always seeing businesses go out of existence because there wasn't enough traffic. I felt like we had to do something. So I started in my little way of talking to people and finding out what they thought. And a lot of them asked me to send any information I got, any progress we made, and so I did. I sent stuff to New York City, I sent stuff to Orange County, California, and betwixt and between, because I tried to get something going here.
What year did you open the shop here in Halltown?
In '83, on a part-time basis.
In '83. I remember back then there were a number of antique shops here in Halltown. It was Mary Lou Stone and her husband had a place, and then Cameron next door here. And
then Richard's brother also had one in betwixt here and where Mary Lou and Richard's was. Well, now Richard died on the 4th of July from cancer. I can't tell you what year. And Mary Lou tried to keep going, but she had to have a leg amputated, which made it more difficult, but she still kept trying. Then she fell and broke the good leg. So she ended up in the hospital. Jerry and she said that they took turns going to the hospital that way. When she'd get out, he'd be in. That's the way it went. But she has had to give it up, and she sold it. And the people that bought it didn't know much about selling antiques. He was a cattle dealer, and he was experienced in turning his money quickly. And when this didn't turn quickly, he got discouraged. So in about 3 months, they closed it up. And then they finally sold it, but it's been sold to a person who is interested in architecture and in restoring buildings like that. Whether she'll ever have a shop in there, I don't know. But now and then, Richard's brother and his wife had that little shop. They are both dead. And Mr. Cameron and Mrs. Cameron are both dead. And so I'm the only one left that was here. Now then down there on the road coming into town, back off, there's another little building that they're trying to kind of get an antique shop going, but they don't work at it completely like I think they might and be able to do well. So they're trying to go to Branson.
And now then, to get items to keep in your shop, I know because we used to come out here in the late 70s and early 80s, this was a nice place to come for Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon and look in the antique shops. And I know from my personal experience that right now finding things to keep in a shop is a full-time job, because it's either been collected up or people just don't put it out for sale anymore.
That's part of the problem. But we go to auctions, and Jerry's a ring man for Steve Foreman, not Freeman, Foreman. And so he gets in on auctions quite often, and we don't have to go to any others because he tries to set them in reasonable enough that people will take it and go, but they don't always. He comes home with things that I wonder, what in the world are we going to do with that? That green case back there that has all those drawers in it with the white labels on it, that's full of silverware for people who want to they just need a piece. So we have open stock silverware, and then I have lots of sets of it too. But he bought that piece at an auction, and he came in and he said, he threw his hat in. I said, what are you doing now? That was out at our home. He said, well, you better come out here and see what I've got. I said, oh, what are we going to do with that? And he had the nerve to say, well, I bought it. You can decide how to use it. Well, I thought about it. I said, Jerry, I know what I'd like to do with it, and I know where I want to put it, where we'll just about have to put it. And I've rearranged in my mind 3 of the pieces that were there, but the 4th one I can't figure what to do with. So he said, asked me about it, so I told him about it. And he said, well, then the one is that big wooden one that turns. And I said, yes. He said, well, now you know we sold that entertainment center, so that could go there. So that was the last problem we had with that. And we put it right back here, and we're still using it there today. And the other things had been sold and long gone. But he washed it all out and cleaned it out for me. And we brought it down here. It took I had a nephew's wife assisting me quite a lot, and she and I worked 3 months getting that set up. It was organized, because it was quite a job.
Where did you teach school?
Oh my. The last place I taught was at Walnut Grove. I was there 11 years, and then I retired. But let's see. Jerry taught at Everton. He and I both taught at Lebanon. And then we went to a little town called Metz, which is almost on the border, Kansas border. And Then from there we came here.
And you taught, what did you teach?
I taught high school English, speech, dramatics, and was librarian at Walnut Grove. I had all those responsibilities.
And what did Jerry teach?
Well, he was a speech teacher to begin with, and then he went on, got more training, and he was superintendent of schools some places. And then he was in this bad auto accident. That's the reason we moved back here in the first place, because I couldn't see how I could keep everything going if I had to pay rent. And of course the farmhouse was there, and we could move into it. And so then from there I got a job at Walnut Grove. And Jerry was off 7 years. He wasn't able to teach. And then when he went, but he took some schooling, and so when he went back, he was a guidance counselor at Verona for, I think he was there 11 years.
You have had Whitehall Mercantile way before the revitalization of historic Route 66, and what have you observed over the past 15, 16 years of the increased promotion of Route 66? Have you noticed a lot of increase in travelers and foreign travelers and such?
Well, that's a good question. We have had in the past a lot of foreign travel, but since 9/11 it has gone way down. And most of our income was from people from foreign countries coming in here because they were traveling Route 66. And they, some had been here and they'd told about it. Now, one of the things that happened was that a young man came in here from Belgium, and he said, could he take pictures? I said, you take any picture you want to. So he was here quite a little while, taking pictures and all of that. And so he went back and he made a travelogue of all of that. And he traveled all over the countries in Europe, giving this travelogue and telling people about it. Well, now how I found out that he was doing all this was we had a family in here from Belgium, and this the gentleman kept saying to the lady, "Are you ready to go?" "No, I'm not." And so the last time he asked, he said, "Why don't you go sit on the porch where it's cool? Because I am staying right here. I have something I want to do right here." Well, she wasn't looking at anything. She was just standing waiting. When the store closed, well, it was time to close and everybody else had left, she said, "I want to tell you something, and I won't take very long, but I want to tell you something." She said, and she mentioned this fellow's name, said, we went to a travelogue that he had put together about Route 66. And he started out and he said, "Now I want to tell you something that I want you to remember. Then we'll go through the travelogue, and I'll tie that in with the travelogue." So he said, "When you get to the state of Missouri, you look for a little town called Halltown. And Mr. and Mrs. White own Whitehall Mercantile, and they will not only do you right, they'll answer your questions, and they won't get angry with you. They'll just be glad to talk to you. So remember that." So then he went on and he went through his whole travelogue, and he said, "Now I want to tell you something I started out with. Don't fail to stop at Halltown, Missouri when you find it. And Mr. and Mrs. White will treat you right." She said he told them that twice, and that's the only place he mentioned twice. So she said, "You must have really been good to him." I said, "Well, I let him take pictures. I answered his questions, and I talked to him about the town because he had questions about the town. I just treated him like I would like to be treated. That's all." So that was one thing I have. I was telling somebody this, and she said, "My goodness, you ought to charge him for doing that." I said, "Ma'am, I have more free advertising than I could ever pay for from this. I'm not going to charge him one penny." And I wrote him a letter and told him that I'd been told about it, and I was glad he was doing that because he'd left his address and everything, and I hoped he was doing well with it. So he sent me back picture that he'd taken of the two of us, and he said, I aimed to send it to you sooner, and I didn't get it done. So that's a lot of the things, one of the things that happened that has really meant a lot to me.
You was talking about the antique shops that was here. I noticed there's been one or two businesses that's tried to start up.
Yes.
One, I believe, was kind of a coffee sandwich shop here and all. A fella, I believe, from California tried to start it, and he was here maybe 1 year. And a lot of people, I believe, travel 66 and decide that they would like to have a business on it, but they don't realize that
it just takes work.
It's work, and it takes time to build up a clientele and getting where you can make money and probably not get rich at doing it either.
No, you don't get rich, but we've managed. But I didn't take a penny out of the business for 3 years. And when Jerry told me we were going to start this up, I said, Jerry, if we have to borrow money to do it, I'm not going to. Because I said, we're too old to get ourselves in debt and try to get out. He said, no, we won't have to. He said, because he's always made more money than I, because he had his master's degree and all that. And I never got anything but just a bachelor's degree. And to get a master's degree in what I wanted, I would have to take a foreign language. Well, deliver me from that. I took Greek in Bible college, and it like to kill me. I mean, I dreamed those characters every night. So no more foreign languages for me. Well, now another thing that might be of interest to people is because you meet, and not only do you get reaction from people in here, when you go places, and I've been on television quite a little bit, and there you'll get the reaction. Well, we went to Eureka Springs. We've always kind of enjoyed that town. And we went to the Crescent Hotel, and they had a kind of a special deal on there that they were advertising. And so we were there for the weekend. Well, when we got up on Sunday morning, we went to the restaurant down there in the lower area of the hotel, and I saw this young man just staring at me. I said, Jerry, is there something wrong? Do I have something out of place? He said, what's the matter? I said, that young man over there is just staring at me. So I wondered if there's something wrong. He said, no, there isn't. Just go ahead. Well, when we got up to leave, why, he came across, and he said, are you Thelma White? And I said, yes. From Halltown, Missouri? Yes. Well, he said, would you shake my hand? I said, well, of course. He said, oh, you're the first celebrity I've ever met. I kept my face straight, but it was hard. But I said, young man, I'm not a celebrity. I'm just a lady trying to do a job. We need to promote Route 66, and that's what I'm trying to do. And he went off. You could tell he was just thrilled to death. And that just struck me, because I've never been the kind that was noticed by other people. But that one time did.
You you've been in this area then for several years and seen quite a few changes in the last 25 years here.
Yes, a lot of big changes. Yes, because, see, we're living on the farm where Jerry was born. He inherited part of it, see, and that's where we lived. And he raises cattle, and he likes to garden, so this time of year he's always hunting for somebody he can give things to. Tomatoes.
Produce.
Tomatoes and cucumbers, and now we've got cantaloupe. But we have multiple thieves out there, like raccoons and armadillos, and now what's the name of the little animal that they use in February to tell where there's going to be?
Groundhogs.
Yes, groundhogs. Oh yes, at least 2 of them are around there. So his garden has been hard hit this summer, but He's kept a lot of it.
Probably the possums help their self too. A
Oh
little bit.
yes, we have possums around there. It's I would get so discouraged I'd quit, but he doesn't. He just keeps on.
And I would imagine the deer come and eat quite a bit too.
Well, they have. Now we haven't seen them this time, but we do have a lot of deer, beautiful things. And I know one time last fall, before the hunting season started, we saw this deer going across the road, and we always just slow down to let them go. We counted 15 in that one bunch. Now this morning as I was coming up here, Jerry said he'd seen these wild turkeys, and there were, I would say, 4 mamas, and then the little ones. And I just slowed way down to let them get across the road because I didn't want to hit one of them. So there, we have them too.
I noticed the area here that there seems to be still a fair amount of farming and all to the west and to the east, but the land seems to flatten out a little bit to the west of here, and it's more prairie.
Because we're on a plateau of the Ozark Mountains, and yes, it is flat. Now I have. We don't pull much from the area here because a lot of people have all the antiques they need, and then we don't offer much else but antiques and collectibles and some usables. And one thing we've been interested in doing is help young people get started when we could, because several times they have come in and bought stuff so they could set up housekeeping. And sometimes it'd be a person by him or herself setting up an apartment. And so I do keep stuff like that to be helpful. Another thing that happened that I had to laugh. I couldn't keep my face straight over this. We had 2 men come in here, and I was back there working on something, and I spoke to them, and they answered, and they had a magazine in their hand. And one of them said, "That's her." "No, it's not." "Yes, that's her." "No, it's not." I said, "Could I answer a question for you?" And they showed me the magazine, and it was the Ozark Mountaineer. And I said, "Yes, that is a picture of me. But I've had my hair cut short since then, so I look a lot different." And he said, "Do they really call you the godmother of the road?" I said, "Some people do." And he'd seen it in that article. And he said, "Well, I didn't know anybody would call anybody that." And I said, "Well, I'm called lots of things, but that's a lot more pleasant than some things I've been called."
Well, you has spent several years here in the shop and everything. You and Jerry don't sell on eBay or anything.
No. My daughter has put a few things on for us in Indiana, but not a whole lot. But she's busy. She held down a job, and she has 2 boys in college, and all of that. But we just sell from the shop here, or if I will mail things that are not too breakable if I'm asked to. I have a lady down in Texas that's always after me for more sacks, feed sacks. She makes sets of tea towels out of them, see, and sells them at a profit. And I don't think you can find anything that'll dry dishes better than those old feed sacks. They were very absorbent. I grew up on those. And then, of course, they had the colored ones, too. And my goodness, my mother made everything out of those colored ones. And she showed Daddy now I want some more like this. She'll tell him, "I don't want any more like that." So he'd try hard to remember when he'd go get feed sacks.
I remember my grandmother used to buy them, and if there was 2 or 3 sacks of the same print, she might buy 2 or 3 sacks at one time so she could get the material to make print dress out of or something.
Right. We made dresses, aprons, curtains, and when I went to college, a good friend of mine made me a bedspread out of the sacks. And she did a beautiful job on it. And And she was one that I told her that she was my third grandmother, and that pleased her. They didn't have any children. She and her husband, they just kind of adopted me.
Life's a lot different now.
Oh yes, yes it is. I think that's one reason people like to come on 66, because they get a feeling for the past, and there's a different set of values, and I think all that just kind of rubs off, and they realize it, and it helps them. I told one lady one time that I thought they were just nostalgia and looking for that kind of a trip. She said, "My goodness, now you sound like President Bush." That was the first one. I said, "Well, I didn't aim to. That's just the way it seems to me."
Well, I think that's one of the big draws that draws the foreign tourist over here.
Yeah.
They want to see the actual people in this country, not down the interstate. Not that the people in the metropolitan areas aren't the real people, but I mean they want to see kind of back to things that aren't maybe so modern looking and been given the generic treatment.
Right.
And that people talk to you.
Yes.
People are friendly.
Yes. That's what they tell me. And I've had people tell me right to my face, "You're the friendliest store we've ever been in." And I said, "Well, thank you. I'm glad that you feel that way." And I don't fail to tell these people from other countries, "I hope you enjoy your trip in our country." That's my parting note to them. Because I do. I don't think we're going to have any kind of peace unless we can get along, and unless we can foster friendship. And so I try to do what I can on that score. And I think one of the things that has struck me on this road, it went right down through the middle of farms, the farm on each side of the road. So when you travel it, you can see people doing all sorts of things. And you get a better idea of what grassroots is all about. And I've had so many say that they were glad to do the travel this and not the interstate because it was so fast and it was friendless. I said, it can be. And when I drove lots of places, I'd pick out the back roads and take off. When I went to Indiana one time, I left a note with him as to how I was going to go. He said he'd never heard of some of those places I was going to stop at. The asthma is getting me this morning. I'm sorry about that. I couldn't help it.
Probably the dry weather and all doesn't.
It aggravates it.
The dust and all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are there any other stories that you can remember of being in business on 66? And
oh, I was thinking of one man who came in here, and we had a big piece of furniture back here, and he said, "You've got that price too cheap." And I said, "Well, we priced it where we can still make money on it." And he said, "But that's too cheap." And he told me all about it, and he pointed out the various things about the construction of it. And he said, "You ought to have at least $1,000 on that." Well, I took the price tag off until I could talk to Jerry about it. And he said, "Well, let's go for it. Let's see if we can do that." And that struck me so, because I never thought anybody would come in and try to be helpful to me like that. But he was. And we put the 1,000 on there. We only had, we had less than 200 on it because we just hadn't paid much for it, and we would still make a nice profit. Well, I had someone come in here and they recognized it for what it was, and it had been here quite a while, and everybody kept saying, "Oh, that's too high. I know it's a nice piece and it's in good shape and it's old, but that's too high." So I let it go for 600 because I thought if I get the cash out of this, fine. And she had the cash. She didn't, because I told her I wouldn't take a check, that large a check, and she was from California. She said, "You don't have to worry. I'll have the cash, and I'll pay cash if I decide to take it." So she walked around and she asked me. I said, "No, I have done all I'm going to do. You either want it at 600 or you don't want it. That's fine." So she took it. And then Jerry was a little bit disgusted with me because I cut it down so much. And I said, "Well, it was taking up space, and we got all this people arguing with us about the price." And I thought, "Oh, if I can get 600 out of that and get it out of here, fine." So that's what we did. And when we first started, I had just a few things in these different shelves here, and nothing much along this side. But in the middle, we had some pieces of furniture, and one of them was an old flour bin that had belonged to his grandmother. And he said he'd bought it at the auction of their stuff, because they did an auction just with the children and grandchildren, and everything was auctioned off that way. Well, he got that, and in the there was also with it a big bowl that she'd used, a wooden bowl, to mix her biscuits and everything in. And it had been put back together with some kind of wire. And he said, "I've got room at the house for that. I want to keep that, and I'll sell this flour bin." And the flour bin had a top on it where you could mix things and roll out your pie dough and everything right on that. So he had a price on it, and a woman came in and she liked it. But she said, "We're heading on vacation, and I don't want to take it now." I said, "Well, you don't have to, but if you give me a down payment, I'll hold it for you." "Oh, it'll be here when we get back, because we're just going to be gone a week." I didn't say another word. She'd been gone 30 minutes when somebody came in and bought that thing, didn't even ask for a penny off. So when the week was over, she came in and said, "I've come after my..." "Well, where is it?" I said, "Out the door." "Oh, no," I said, 30 minutes after you were here. I said, "I tried to help you, but when you wouldn't leave a deposit, I couldn't do anything more." She said, "Oh, I know. That's the way I do things." So she was back in, 2 or 3 years later, and found some, paperweights that she wanted. And they were made by this man in Indiana. And his name was on them and all that. So she's picked out one that she'd take, and her husband just reached over and got the other 3. And he said, "We're taking all 4 of them. I'm not going to listen to her cry all the way home because she didn't get it." So that was, I thought that was kind of funny when she came back and she just couldn't. And yet I wouldn't laugh at her because the poor thing, she was really heartbroken. But what can you do? You can't force them to buy.
Nope, nothing. If just shows if you see something you want, you better get it when you see it.
Yes. Then we had a copper washing machine. Beautiful when we got it cleaned up. And we had that, we'd gotten it in here, we had it sitting in the front there. It was on a Saturday. And somebody came in and I spoke to him, and I went right to that washer and just stood there and looked. And her husband was with her, and then somebody else was looking at it too, I noticed. And so she said, "Is this the price?" I said, "Yes, I have to have that for that washing machine." Because I'd priced it as reasonably as I could because I thought it might be hard to sell. And she said, "You know, I forgot to pick up my checkbook." "Well, I didn't bring mine either," he said. She said, "Would you hold that for us while we go back to, not Carterville, but the town next to Carterville?"
Webb City.
"Yes, Webb City. And we'll be back with the money." And I said, "Do you have anything to leave?" She said, "I can give you 25. I said, "Fine, I'll hold it for you." And the other old boy that was there, he says, "Boy, I was afraid that she wouldn't. I was so hoping she wouldn't accept that, and I could get that because that's what I'm hanging around here for. Was the washing machine, and I didn't see it until you folks clustered around it. She said, "Well, that's tough. I bought it." And they went back, and I think they must have flown both ways because it wasn't any time at all till they were back, and she came through. She said, "I've got my money." I said, "Okay." And she said, and they brought back a pickup too, so they could load it in. That was the only day that that washing machine was in the shop.
Didn't last long.
No, it didn't. And that happens lots of times, you know. That, and then I have people who will ask me to look for something. And I do this quite often. And I send them a card when I find it. And but, you know, I had a lady come in here and she wanted a little child's iron. And they're only about this big. And they are really cute. And I said, well, how much are you willing to pay for it? Because I know of an auction where one is coming up and I can probably get it. But I don't want to pay more than you're willing to pay. And so she told, oh, the sky's the limit. So silly me. I bid until I got it. And I sent her a card that we had it. She came in and she, well, I can't pay that price for it. I said, lady, you told me the sky was the limit. So I said, I got that for you, and I had to pay quite a little bit to get it. So if you don't want that, just leave it. Somebody else will come along. Well, I can't pay that. So she started to the door, and she said, oh, I want you to look for something. I said, no. You won't? And I said, no. I got this for you. You wouldn't take it. I don't look for anything more for you. She thought that was kind of hateful. She said, I said, no, I don't think so. They're just being practical. You can't do that. And that thing was here 10 or 12 years before I ever sold it. And to have your money tied up in it that long, it's not good.
No.
But you know, that's just one instance. And there's so many good things that people do that I don't try to dwell on the bad things. But that one, that's always stuck with me. Because I say to myself, now don't be foolish. Don't believe this again.
Do you get many bus tours or anything? Do they stop here when they come through? Or
We have had, one summer we had 2 or 3 bus tours through here. And I know once, the first one that came in, the driver picked out some records that he wanted. And he said, you'll just give these to me, won't you? I said, no, I won't. He said, so I told him, I said, you can have them for such and such a price, which was cheaper than I had them marked. And he said, well, no, I don't think I'll take them. He said, you just evidently don't understand how this works. And I said, why, I understand payola when I see it. And he said, oh. I said, you're wanting me to pay you so you'll bring more bus tours in here. But I said, we're not set up for them. And we don't have restrooms. And I said, I can't do it. And with only one person to take care of a whole busload, can't do it. Oh, he said, well, then you don't really want busloads. I said, no, I don't. So that was the last time. That was the last summer we ever had that. And then there were 2 smaller busloads came in later. And I was able to take care of them fairly well, but they didn't bring any more through. Well, why should they? We didn't have the facilities they needed.
they was looking for a rest stop?
Yes, they sure were. And it won't work because we just can't do that. And there's no, if they wanted to eat, there's no place in town to eat anymore. At one time there was a restaurant here, but not now.
Where they go get a cup of coffee or a Coke if they didn't want to shop, why they could do that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Even the gas station up there on the corner is not open anymore.
No.
The one on old 66.
He's got feed for dogs in there now.
That's that yellow building.
Uh-huh. They've just got through painting it
Okay.
yellow. Uh-huh. Because the colors for that company are gold and black, so that's the reason they were painting all that. Yes.
and all. Well, Thelma, we appreciate you talking to us today, and
Well,
it's
I was glad to
we've
do it.
enjoyed it, and we'd like to thank you for your time and all.
Well, now you want me to send Jerry back this way?